Hi, my name is Layton. I'm an intuitive and a mystic. And if you are new here, I do a lot of talking about the nervous system. I had really wanted to do a video talking about speaking in tongues. This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a really long time because it's a huge part of my practice. And recently I just kept feeling like, no, not right now. Because first, you really need to talk about the nervous system and specifically the way that it's being affected by 5G and all of these frequencies being blasted at us left and right. You know, we have a new sickness, a new sickness that has been announced. And yeah, there's all of this craziness. It's kind of supposed to be like the new COVID. And yeah, I have some theories around it, and I'm certainly not the only one to come up with theories like this. But my theories are based on what I was kind of picking up on intuitively, what I was feeling. And in general, I mean, that aside, that's just one name for something that's been going on for quite a while, something that is going to continue to go on and be called various names over time. And yeah, we have to be prepared. We have to have resilience within the nervous system because quite frankly, our nervous system and the health of our nervous system is going to be our only defense. You know, when crap hits the fan and we have nothing left, when we are facing possible lockdowns and social scores and when we don't have anything. I mean, a lot of us, especially those of us that are kind of going against the grain with a lot of things, we in the future will be at risk for losing our jobs, you know, possibly having to live off grid, and God knows what is going to come out of all of this. And the only thing that we can really do to protect ourselves, the one thing that we will have to guard as if it is our greatest treasure, is the health of our nervous system. And that is because our nervous system, specifically the vagus nerve, but really the whole nervous system, is the key. It is the gateway to our higher senses. This is how we etherize. It's how we develop our I, or our individuality. It's how we connect to higher forces and higher worlds. It's how we develop our clairs. I mean, everything that we need stems from a healthy and resilient nervous system. And when we don't have that, when we are traumatized, when we are shut down, when we are chronically dysregulated, we are acting out of the sympathetic state, which Rudolf Steiner has linked with as the lower nervous system, and that is linked with the eighth sphere. So when we are constantly in that state, and you know, if you find yourself constantly in a state of dysregulation, don't be too discouraged. It happens. There are factors outside of our control. For example, if you are dealing with chronic illness, if you are working in a job where, I don't know, maybe you're in tech or working in a hospital surrounded by machines that are emitting all kinds of radiation, or really any type of job that is high stress, if you have a lot of stressful events happening in your family, it will be very difficult to stay regulated. And when things like that are beyond your control, you need to know and understand that all we can do is our best. All we can do is the absolute best that we can do. And when we do that, we will be honored. That effort will be honored. But we need to be doing our best. We can't just say, well, you know, this is my situation, or these things are going to happen either way. And because of that, I don't have to try. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to attempt to regulate myself because that's just not how it works. So in order to protect ourselves, we have to build resilience in the nervous system. So that is what I'm going to be talking about today. And the reason why I'm saying resilience and not regulation is because as important as regulation is, and regulation is very important. I mean, we want to feel calm. We want to feel centered. We want to feel good, but regulation is not the goal. And the reason why regulation is not the goal is because a lot of us see regulation as kind of like this destination, you know, like the more work I put in, the more effort I put in, the more I do the exercises and I do the breathing and I talk with my inner child, I'm just going to be so calm, so regulated all the time. And that is simply not realistic because life happens. We cannot always be regulated. We just can't be. However, we can build resiliency. We can build resiliency within the nervous system so that even when we're not regulated, we are centered. Even when we're not regulated, we are stable. Even when we're not regulated, we can bring ourselves back into the heart. And we're not totally lost in the chaos of the world and in dysregulation and in everything that is happening. I do want to say, though, that in building this resiliency, we are in a very difficult position. And that is because everything, you know, the 5G and the frequencies being blasted at us and these crazy sicknesses coming out of the woodwork seemingly, all of this stuff is designed to break down the nervous system. It is intentionally designed to make resiliency almost impossible. It's not impossible, but they want us to feel that way. They want us in a state of constant defeat. They want us in a state of survival mode. And when we're in that state of survival mode, I've talked about this in my videos before, you know, the frontal lobes become disabled. The prefrontal cortex shuts down. The hippocampus will change size. The amygdala is out of whack. I mean, this affects our perception. It affects our ability to regulate. It affects our cognition. It affects our memory. It affects our ability to access logic. And all of these things, these are our natural defenses. This is how we defend ourselves against attack. So when these things are being targeted 24/7, that breaks down the spirit. When we go into survival mode, we can't access those higher forces. We can't access spirit the same way. Have you ever been in a complete crisis, or maybe you came down with an illness that just left you feeling completely spiritually disconnected? It's because when we are severely dysregulated, when we are in that survival state, like I was saying before, it drops you into the sympathetic state. So we have the higher nervous system, and that is connected to higher worlds. That is connected to our self, our I, our individuality. That's how we access our higher self, how we access our guides. This is how we access our clairs in a way that is clear, in a way that is grounded, and in a way that really nurtures us. However, when we drop down into that sympathetic state, this is where we have fear, we have paranoia, we are connected straight to the 8th sphere. We may still be experiencing our clairs, but we are going to be seeing some scary things. You know, this is where we become also very prone to entity attachments, which is something else that I want to touch on in this video. And overall, we just cannot access our higher self in that state. And so this is what they want to do. You know, this is really everything, because the end game is to separate us from our spirit. That is the end game with this. They want us completely separated. They don't want us in a physical form, and they certainly don't want us connected to spirit in any way, shape, or form. They want to pave a new way, and they want to pave that new way through technology. And so they're using technology as this weapon against the spirit, okay? So this is really, really important to understand. And we don't have to be afraid, you know? I mean, I'm using technology right now, and actually for my work, I have to be on my laptop quite a bit throughout the day. But it's about, like I was saying, building that resiliency And there's a level to it where when we are conscious and aware of what is going on, there's a kind of protection in that. Just in the awareness alone, that adds to this protection, because it is when we aren't aware, when we don't know, that we can have the blinders put over us and we can be tricked and fooled. So there's a lot to cover specifically with this topic. As you can imagine, when I'm saying that they want to have us in this sympathetic state, so again, the lower nervous system, the eighth sphere, it's not just because they want our physical bodies in this state. They want everything in this state. They want to bring, how in the Bible we talk about, bringing heaven to earth. They want to make the eighth sphere just the normal realm. That's what they want. They want that to be where all of us are operating in, because that is the only way that they can reign over earth and over us. So when that's happening, it completely disrupts. When we are in that lower nervous system, when we are acting out of the eighth sphere, essentially, it completely disrupts our ability to develop the I, because the I is developed through the heart. And that is developed through the development of the higher nervous system. So it completely disables our ability to develop that properly. Now, what does that mean? It means that we end up completely identifying with our trauma self or our false self. It is part of us, but it's not the core of us. It's not who we are. It's not who we are intended to be. And so we end up being kind of in this vicious cycle, right? Where we're traumatized already. Already all of us are traumatized right off the bat, because we all have trauma, we all have pain, we all have a shadow. But then they are actively projecting all of these electronic frequencies at us that are designed to keep us in that trauma. And what ends up happening is that our identity begins to form with that trauma so intricately. And the way that I see it is as a form of reverse etherization. The etherization is still happening, but the way I see it is that it is completely reversed, like a black mirror of who you're supposed to be. And the process is just completely inverted at that point. And we end up forming our entire identity around this trauma. When we do that, all of our identity wounds are activated. And this is something that we are really, I did an intuitive forecast. I didn't go too in depth about things. It's just kind of an overview, but I had posted, you can find it on my website or on Twitter, just a brief intuitive forecast for 2024. And I believe we are going to be seeing so much more of this than what we've been seeing. People identifying so deeply with their trauma that the manifestations of that start to become obvious to even people that aren't usually aware. Even people that don't usually see these things are going to see and notice that something is very wrong. Something is very, very wrong. And think about the eighth sphere. Think about the kind of lower astral, nasty, disgusting, deformed, inverted creatures that take up the eighth sphere. And then imagine people identifying with that. Imagine people identifying so deeply with their trauma that they start manifesting as these forms. I mean, that's scary. That's honestly scary. So this is what we are protecting ourselves against. Now, on to building resilience, okay? I have gone over in the past a bunch of different practices and whatnot. What I'm going to give you is the 4 basic somatic practices that I teach every single person that I work with. I personally do these in my own life every single day. I may or may not later in the video give examples. of that, just depending on, I guess, how long I decide to go and how much time that I have. So these are just super simple. And I've said this before, but a lot of nervous system work, a lot of nervous system regulation and somatic practices can seem kind of corny. They can seem really simple. They can seem like that is so easy, or that is such a small thing. How could it possibly make such a large difference? But I promise you that it does. And think of it this way. Imagine that you have a ton of weight to lose or something like that. And what happens if you do nothing? Well, if you do nothing, nothing changes. But now imagine that you just start walking, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes a day. That may seem like nothing, but if you do that for a year, it's going to make a difference. And that is exactly how somatic practices operate. We are essentially building a relationship with the nervous system. If you just meet someone off the street and they come over and they hug you and they try and nurture you and comfort you, it's probably not going to do much for you because you don't know them. And that's how it is with our nervous system. When our nervous system is used to being in a state of fear and used to being in a state of trauma, and then we try and rush in and comfort ourselves, rarely does that actually do anything unless we take the time to build up a relationship with ourselves, with the nervous system. So that being said, these exercises build that trust. They establish that trust within the body, and over time, it makes a very, very big difference. So the first thing is very, very simple. It's just somatic noticing. When you are feeling an overwhelming emotion, when you are feeling a trigger, or really anything that is uncomfortable. Maybe you have some social anxiety, maybe you're feeling a little bit defeated or depressed. You want to go within and you want to just kind of feel inside the body. You want to feel the physical sensations that you're feeling. You want to check, kind of do a body scan and see, is my chest heavy? I have a kitty trying to come up on me right now. Is my chest heavy? Am I feeling tightness? Am I feeling butterflies? Am I feeling maybe tension in my body? Am I feeling a looseness or a lightness? Do I feel detached or dissociated? And you want to pay attention to all of those things. And when you're feeling those things, it's really important to honor wherever you're at and not to feel too freaked out by it or anything like that. I know that when I was first doing this, I would really beat myself up about it. I would beat myself up so much about feeling detached or dissociated or anxious. And if I had, say I had a really heavy feeling, I wanted it to go away. I mean, of course, we don't like feeling that way. It's not a fun feeling. But in wanting it to go away, I was not being present with myself. I wasn't loving myself. I was saying to myself, even if not consciously, the way that you are right now isn't good enough. It's not good enough for me. This is not okay, and you have to change. We can't build trust with ourselves that way. We can't build resilience in the nervous system that way. So I would encourage you, when you notice these sensations coming up, to just be so gentle with yourself, so compassionate with yourself, so loving. And if you feel dissociated or detached or anxious, to say, I know that this is uncomfortable. I don't like this either. This is a difficult feeling to sit with, but you don't have to sit with it alone. I'm right here with you, and we can feel this together. And if it starts to get too much, then move on. You don't want to fry your nervous system by trying to force yourself to feel something that you aren't ready to feel yet. So if it becomes too overwhelming, if it becomes too much, then stop and go for a walk maybe, or talk to someone that you love, or do something that is going to kind of get you out of that state. So the next thing is called self-havening. I have spoken about this, I believe, in previous videos. Actually, I may have even mentioned this in my last video about psychic somatics. So self-havening is essentially when you're taking time to really connect to the body. So you can have your hands over your heart, or maybe one hand over your heart, and sometimes I'll put my other hand on my stomach. You can pull yourself into a self-hug where, you know, I always tell this to people that I work with. A lot of times when we talk about giving a self-hug, a lot of people kind of instinctively go for this motion, but realistically, that's not how we hug another person. And the nervous system, it knows that something feels weird about that. So it's not quite as comforting. When you do a self-hug, you want to hug yourself in a way that feels like another person is hugging you. For example, putting one hand under here, another one up here, or maybe reaching it back a little further if you can, and just kind of squeezing yourself, kind of pulling yourself in and just, you know, feeling that. So that's a good way to do self-havening. You can also, sometimes when I'm self-havening, I will kind of touch the back of my hair, or maybe run my hands up and down my arms. This one specifically, I don't know why, it's always so comforting. I feel like I'm a cat and I'm petting myself. There's something so comforting about it to me. I know some people that like doing that to their legs or their knees. And if you're really feeling detached and dissociated, it can be helpful to touch yourself somewhere on your body that you aren't normally touched, such as maybe like the soles of your feet, or if you can reach it, you know, maybe your back or the backs of your knees. Something that doesn't get a whole lot of attention has the tendency to be very embodying. From there, the third thing that we're going to move on to build resiliency in the nervous system, which again starts by building that relationship with yourself. Because going back to what I was saying in the beginning of the video, there may come a point where the only thing that any of us have, the only tool that any of us have, is ourselves, our own physical bodies. And this has been given to us, this form has been given to us for a reason. We're supposed to be in these bodies. We are supposed to be on this beautiful earth. We are supposed to look like this. We're not from another planet. We're from here. This is exactly where we're supposed to be. And as long as we are dissociating from that truth, we can't inhabit our bodies the way that we need to. And we're not going to be able to protect ourselves from what is to come. We won't be able to. So this connection with the self, this connection with the form, this is one of the most important things that you can do in this lifetime. Connecting to your physical form and refusing to abandon it, refusing to deny it. It is one of the single most important things that you can do. And it's going to help other people too. When they see that you're not abandoning yourself, when they see that you are owning who you are, that's important. So getting into the third thing and really building this resilience, resourcing. Now, resourcing is something that I also utilize pretty much every day if I have anything happen that is maybe stressful. And the most common way that I resource, you may have seen in my previous videos, I have this beautiful cross pendant that I wear every single day. And when I feel overwhelmed, when I feel stressed out, anxious, you know, whatever it may be, things happen sometimes. I had a particularly stressful day yesterday and it got a lot better. It wasn't even a bad day. it was just one of those days where everything that could go wrong was going wrong, and it was still working out in the end. But it's like, why was it this stressful? You know, like, why did all of these things have to happen? And yeah, I find myself gravitating towards putting my hand over it and pulling it out, and I'll be playing with it and touching it, because there's nothing special about this pendant. There's nothing magical about it, but it reminds me of higher forces. It reminds me of Christ. It reminds me to connect to myself in that way. It reminds me that I'm safe. It reminds me that there are things in the world bigger than me and my tiny little stressful situation, you know, and it helps me. It's grounding. Now, with resourcing, it does not have to be a physical object. You can actually resource with the memory of another person. It can be the memory of someone that you love, or someone that makes you feel safe, and just kind of tapping into their energy that way. I want to be really clear that when you are resourcing through a memory, you are not using that person's energy in a resource, as a resource, in the sense that you are not currently tapping into their energy and siphoning from them. That is not what we are talking about here. What I'm talking about, if the distinction needs to be made, I'm going to make the distinction. I want to be very clear so that people know how to do this, and in a way that is very safe, is you think about the person, whoever it may be, that you love, but you think about the fact that you love them. You think about the things that you have gratitude towards them with. You think about your connection with them. So it's you aren't really using their energy in real time as a resource or anything like that. You are resourcing the feelings that this relationship gives you, the feelings of safety. So you are connecting to memories of them, and you are connecting to the gratitude that you feel for them and the safety that they cause you to feel. If it's someone that you can co-regulate with, if it's someone that respects your boundaries, someone that is just a safe person overall. Just thinking about that person and thinking about the fact that they create a safe space for you can be resourcing. So once again, you are not, you know, like creepily looking at a photo of someone and trying to siphon their energy or anything like that. That is not what we're talking about here. But you can tap into the memories that you have with them and really access that feeling of safety that way. You can also resource with a person that is physically with you through co-regulation. This will also help build resiliency. Although I will say, I think it is very important to learn how to do this without another person. And you may not be there yet. You may have to just start wherever you are. Everyone should start wherever they are. And if where you currently are and the resources you currently have involve co-regulating through another human being, there's nothing wrong with that. But eventually the goal should be to know how to feel safe with ourselves, to know how to co-regulate with ourselves. We do need other people. We will always need other people, but we also need to know how to take care of us. We also need to know how to show up for ourselves and how to meet our needs in that way. So resourcing can also be just doing something like the last exercise, self-havening. It can be looking at nature or a sunrise, or, you know, it can really just be anything that's going to make you feel safe. Resourcing can be connecting with your cat or dog or fish, whatever it is that you have. So yeah. And the last thing that I'm going to say with different techniques for building resiliency is it's curiosity through observation. And in my somatic training, it's actually really funny. I always give this example when I'm talking to people about this specific technique, because I'll never forget in my training where the woman who was leading it, she was talking about how we need to observe when we have really intense feelings and emotions. We need to scan the body. We need to just kind of watch everything. You know, watch all of the emotions, even if they're heavy, even if they're scary. We need to watch them like we are watching clouds moving by, or like we are watching a snowfall. And I remember thinking, lady, that sounds so peaceful. But sometimes when I'm just observing my emotions, because she had used the analogy of looking out a window and you're observing the clouds going by and you're observing the snow falling, you know, and I'm thinking, sometimes for me, it's like I'm looking out the window and I'm observing a bear attacking a person, or someone getting carjacked, or, you know, something crazy like that. That's just how it is sometimes. Sometimes it really is this incredibly intense experience, and honestly, that's okay. So what we want to do is get very curious when that happens. And I'm going to use one of my own experiences as an example for this one. So some of you who follow me on Twitter and whatnot, or who work with me, especially if you meet with me in person, then you know that there is a no fragrance policy, because I, in the past, have had a lot of allergic responses to fragrances. So I have really been working to rewire my neural pathways, because this is not something I was always allergic to in the past. I had a very traumatic experience with a toxic exposure, and my nervous system went into a state of activation after that, where anything with a very strong smell it felt like a threat to my nervous system. And this is completely normal. This stuff also happens to people like me who are somatic practitioners. This is just how the nervous system sometimes responds. So what I have been doing is working on rewiring those neural pathways and working on bringing my nervous system into a state of safety, even when it doesn't feel safe. And this is, it has in the past been very easy to do with certain emotional states and with thoughts and whatnot, but I found it a lot more challenging with this, because in the past, having a strong smell or fragrances or whatever it may be actually was life-threatening for me, and I did almost die from anaphylaxis multiple times. So this has been a challenge for me. But I am up for a challenge. I'm always up for a challenge. I am always willing to give it my best shot. So that being said, I had taken an Uber sometime last week, and this is after I have been working on this stuff for a while. So I have actually made tremendous progress with this. I am not having anaphylactic reactions currently. I have not had anaphylactic reactions in quite a while now, which is really incredible. It's been a few months, which is a very big deal. I was having anaphylactic reactions a few times a week, but prior to this, while still in recovery from that toxic exposure. So it's working, and I'm sure I will upload a video talking all about how to rewire your neural pathways and how I found success with that and everything in the future. But for now, I'll say that, like I said, I had been already working on this for a while. And I took an Uber. I was coming back from an appointment, and the Uber reeked of cologne. I mean, so strongly that I could not physically breathe. It was extremely overwhelming. And I'm like, okay, this is a big test for me. I need to make sure that I'm very aware of everything. I need to make sure that I am, not falling into those same traps that I was falling into before, of fear and anxiety and wondering, am I going to go anaphylactic? Is something going to happen? So it's really loud outside my apartment right now. I hope it's not too distracting for you guys, but there are all kinds of crazy noises going on out there. So yeah, hopefully you don't hear it too much and it's not too distracting. It's a little distracting for me, but like I said, I was in this Uber and really strong smells and whatnot. And I decided to put the curiosity and observation technique to the test. So I'm saying to myself, I smell this cologne. It is extremely strong. That's interesting. It's kind of taking up the whole car. That's interesting. And I had put down the back window to get some fresh air. And so I allowed myself to acknowledge the smell. I allowed myself to acknowledge the fact that it felt like it was taking over the entire car and I felt like I couldn't breathe. So I'm acknowledging it. I'm not ignoring it. I'm not bypassing it. But then what I'm doing is I'm saying to myself, now what else do I see? What else can I acknowledge? What else can I get curious about? So I'm noticing the smell, but what else do I notice? And I'm noticing the seat underneath my body supporting me. I'm noticing the temperature in the Uber. I'm noticing how dark it is outside. I'm noticing the way that the trees look as we're driving by. I'm noticing the music that's playing. I'm noticing every single thing that I can possibly notice. And I'm noticing it with as much detail as I can possibly suck out of it. I mean, really milking it for that detail. And the reason why we want to do this is because what we're essentially trying to do is take the uncomfortable or scary or whatever the sensation is that we are noticing, and we are trying to make it equal to everything else that we notice so that it no longer feels so scary, so that it no longer feels so overwhelming. And despite the fact that that was my biggest test thus far in terms of fragrances, because it was a really strong exposure. I mean, in the past, I probably would have had to ask to be let out on the side of the road, and I probably would have had to use an EpiPen or something like that. So this was a very big feat, and I totally passed. And I was able to recover, not because there's anything special about me or anything magical that I'm doing that other people can't do, but because through establishing safety within the nervous system, we can rewire our neural pathways. We can let the body know that it does not have to respond to things the way that it used to respond to things. Okay? So that being said, it's not always going to be that smooth of a transition, you know? In the beginning of me trying to do this, I had so many instances where I felt very unsafe. And I'm noticing and I'm doing all the things, but I still felt very unsafe. And when that happens, you need to self-care. When that happens, you need to show yourself so much love, patience, compassion, gentleness. And this is where inner child work comes in and really becomes something so special. You want to reparent yourself. And this is another one of those things that can seem really cringe to people, you know? But I'm just gonna embarrass myself. If you think that inner child work is cringe, that's completely okay. I'm probably gonna make it sound more cringe right now, but I'm just gonna share a little bit of what I do to myself. I will talk out loud to myself and my nervous system. And the reason why I do this is because our nervous system responds to the words that we say. When we are complaining out loud, when we are gossiping, when we are being negative, or when we are expelling fear out of our mouth, the nervous system will respond. The nervous system will hear it and go, oh no, we're not safe right now. We can't trust this situation. We can't trust that person. These things are all bad. And the nervous system will begin to either go into fight or flight or just completely shut down or totally dissociate. One of those things is going to happen. So what we want to do, and I'm not saying that you can never say a negative word out of your mouth again. That's just not realistic. But you want to be mindful of, what am I speaking over my body? What am I telling my body is dangerous to me? What am I telling my body is unsafe to me? And you don't want to gaslight yourself. Some things are dangerous. Some things are unsafe. The reason why our nervous system reacts the way that it does to threats, something that is actually a threat, is to protect us. These exist as very helpful protective mechanisms within the body for a reason. But the problem is that we have been bombarded and traumatized and manipulated by society for so long that we no longer feel safe in the world. We don't feel safe in public. We don't feel safe in our day-to-day life with things that we should feel safe with people that we should feel safe with. And this is why it is so important to reclaim that safety, to reestablish that safety, and to build resiliency. So I will be speaking out loud to myself as if I am a child. And it's really important that, if you want to visualize the higher nervous system as your adult higher self and your lower nervous system as a small, wounded child, do you want that child roaming around the sketchy 8th sphere? No, you don't. And not only that, but you're not going to scold that child. You're not going to yell at that child. You're not going to abandon that child. How would you speak to this child that you are trying to protect? When you see a child in front of you that is desperate and afraid and relying on you for validation, relying on you for direction, relying on you for safety, how are you going to respond to that child? How are you going to show up for that child in the moment? So when I am speaking to my nervous system, when I feel desperate, when I feel unsafe, when I feel scared, I speak to my nervous system out loud as if I'm speaking to that little scared child. And I say, it's okay, baby. You're okay. You're okay. I am right here with you. And I can do the self-hug. I can breathe. I can pet the arms, and I say, I'm not going anywhere. I know you're scared. You're allowed to be scared. Or I know this sucks. It does. Whatever situation you're upset about is horrible. And I'm upset too, because I'm upset that you have to deal with that. But baby, it's going to be okay. I love you. I love you, and I'm not going to leave you. I love you, and you don't have to do this alone. I love you, and I'm going to protect you. I love you, and you don't have to be perfect. Everything that you're feeling right now makes sense. It's okay to feel that way. And I'm not going to abandon you for it. And I talk out loud to my nervous system. I talk out loud to that little girl that's afraid. And I speak to her, as cringe as it may sound, like I'm not speaking to me. I am, but it's a different part of me. And we really have to access in that moment the adult that we wish had made us feel safe in childhood. If you were lucky enough to have an adult that made you feel safe in childhood, then emulate them. Emulate them, because you still have that wounded inner child, we all do, that comes out sometimes, that needs that extra love, that needs that sense of safety and protection, And this is how we build resiliency. These are the practices we can utilize to build resiliency. Now, there are a lot of outside practices too. You know, we really need to, in the building resiliency, before I get to the outside practices, we also really need to be mindful to protect ourselves psychically. Be really careful about the media that you're taking in. Be really careful about the kinds of people that you are interacting with, because many people are under the influence of these lower astral entities, completely possessed. Something else that I want to mention, I can't remember which lecture this is in off the top of my head right now, but Steiner, you know, if you live in America, Steiner actually said that America is actually, we are kind of ruled by the sub-earthly planes. And that means that the folk spirits that we are interacting with, they rule over our will, meaning that if we don't build up and strengthen the will, if we don't develop the higher nervous system and really develop a strong a strong individuality, then our will is completely possessed and taken over by the sub-earthly realms, by the eighth sphere, by these Ahrimanic demon things. We don't want that, you know, we don't want that. But so many people are currently under that influence. And, you know, obviously we know that there are a lot of outside influences that are kind of leading people to that, especially having to do with COVID and whatnot. And people made decisions that kind of helped that along. I don't want to say that it caused it, but it helped that along. And that also doesn't mean that they're permanently stuck in that state, because I don't believe that they are. But we need to protect ourselves, because there are entities roaming and they are everywhere and they are seeking to possess people. And I know when you hear stuff like that, it's like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. And it is disturbing for sure, but it shouldn't be, we shouldn't be living in fear. We just need to be mindful. We need to protect ourselves. You know, we really need to build up that psychic protection, build up that nervous system health. And when we are grounded and centered in the heart, and when we have that resiliency in the nervous system, this is what's going to protect us. And again, you don't have to be regulated all the time. Most of the time you probably won't be, not the way that things are, not with the way that things are going. It makes sense to still be dysregulated. It makes sense to be overwhelmed. But when you have that resiliency, again, that means that you can be dysregulated and still be grounded and centered and stable in Christ and connected to your higher self. You can be dysregulated without dropping into the eighth sphere, you know? Because you have that resiliency. So now when it comes to kind of outside things that we can do, you really want to be mindful of social media use, be mindful of the media that you're taking in, the entertainment that you are taking in, especially when it comes to music, especially when it comes to modern music. This is one of those things that people get angry with me about sometimes. You know, I didn't just have an imaginary bone to pick with modern music, especially modern pop music. I could not care less on my own. What I'm sharing is what I have clairvoyantly perceived, what I have clairsentiently perceived. And that is that there are a lot of extremely harmful frequencies being projected through this music at us. And not only that, but there are these egregores that are attached to the frequencies. And why would you want to submerge yourself in that? You know, I do get it. I do get it in the sense that there was a lot of music that I used to love listening to, and certain artists that I liked. And I'm not demonizing music as a whole. There's a lot of great music out there. But when it comes to artists that are very obviously working with darker forces, and the music is very obviously dysregulating, and the frequencies are designed to dissociate you from the body, you need to ask yourself at some point, why am I putting up with this? Why am I okay with this? If you had a cup of water and someone put a drop or two of poison in there, it's all mixed in there. You may be thirsty, but you're not going to be that thirsty. You're not going to be so thirsty that you drink the poison. So why do we do that when it comes to entertainment? You know, why? Why do we do that? I think it's really important to get to the root of that. And I'm not judging anyone that listens to certain people. This has nothing to do with my personal opinions. Again, like I said, it's about what I'm perceiving. And I personally cut out a lot of music several years ago because it was so dysregulating, because it was just absolutely horrible for the nervous system, for the spirit. So we really want to be mindful of that. And also, we want to stay away from anything that is going to be very overstimulating in general, especially too much caffeine, too much sugar. If you are the kind of person to take a ton of supplements, there are a lot of nootropics out there and stuff that are just incredibly dysregulating to the system, detoxes that are incredibly dysregulating to the system. So you want to invite more grounding forces into the nervous system to kind of balance that out. Also, limiting electricity. Something my guides started telling me recently is if you're not using it, unplug it. And even if you think that that is kind of going above and beyond or maybe a little extreme, it'll save you money. So, I mean, what's the harm, you know? What's the harm at that point? So yeah, there are lots of little things we can do, and being very mindful of your health. Get exercise, go outside, eat good food, good grounding food, healthy food, not the processed crap. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a treat here and there. Of course you can, but what is the majority of what you are consuming? All across the board. I mean, is the majority of what you are consuming in terms of food, media, entertainment, the types of people that you interact with, is the majority of it good and healthy and supportive of your nervous system, or is it draining you? Is it harming you? Is it affecting your sleep? You know, speaking of sleep, I would definitely say that, I mean, 5G and crazy frequencies and all of that aside, it's going to be better for your nervous system to just not sleep with a phone in your room at all. And you'll notice the difference. It feels a lot better. So soon, I hope to make a video where I am going really in depth on specifically the vagus nerve, the way that it connects to the higher nervous system, the role of etherization, or should I say the role of the vagus nerve in etherization and kind of the mechanics of that. I was considering maybe going into that in this video, but I am actually really cold, really cold right now. I don't even know. It's been cold and stormy outside all day, and I'm right by the window, and it has just been getting colder and colder and colder as I've been recording this video. So I had left myself room. I was like, you know, if I get to this other stuff, then I get to it. But that would be probably at least another hour. So I'm just going to save that for another video. But it's something I really want to talk about. It's something I really want to talk about etherization more. I would love to really get into the mechanics and kind of the deeper occult science behind the vagus nerve specifically. I would love to have an entire video just on that with lots of exercises for you guys. And I'm considering, I don't know, I don't hold me to this, because I don't know when I would have the time and resources to kind of put all of this together. But I am hoping to come out with some kind of course specifically in regards to the nervous system, the higher nervous system, the lower nervous system, and how to kind of move through those different states. I want to go really deep into vagal toning and polyvagal theory and all of this stuff, and how that impacts us spiritually and psychically. I think it's really important. That being said, this was kind of a heavy video to make, not in the sense that talking about the resiliency and the nervous system, none of those things in particular are heavy, but we are in a heavy time. We're in a heavy time. And again, please do not take that to mean that you need to be living in fear, because fear is the single worst thing that we could possibly do to our nervous system. And that, like I said before, but I'm going to reiterate, that's just going to drop us right down into the 8th sphere. That's exactly where they want us. But we can't be foolish. And we can't be so idealistic that we refuse to see reality, and that we refuse to see where we are heading now as a society, because it's dark. It's dark. And if we don't accept that, then we're not going to be able to be prepared. And if we're not prepared, then we can't fight back. But through building this resiliency, through connecting with Christ, through strengthening the higher nervous system and pulling ourselves into the higher nervous system, that is how we are going to replenish our soul, replenish the earth with higher forces. It's really like a network. If you imagine every single person on the planet as a tiny gray dot, and you just see the entire earth covered in these gray dots, and as people move into the higher nervous system, the dot lights up and it becomes a bright light. And what ends up happening is the more people that come into that state, the more people that connect to Christ, the more people that build that resiliency, that develop the eye, pretty soon the entire globe will be lit up. And that is how we will evolve, by developing in that way, by understanding that our physical form is our spiritual technology. It's all we need. Everything that we need is, everything that you need is in your body, you know? So don't take it for granted. Honor it, cherish it, love it. Be there for yourself. I don't care if it's corny. I don't care if it's cringe. Be there for yourself. Hug yourself. Love yourself. You know? So if you have any questions about this, if there is anything more on this topic that you would like me to get into, please let me know. Thank you for bearing with me through all of the crazy noises outside, through how cold I am. I feel like I keep kind of sharply inhaling because, yeah, I'm honestly shivering over here. It is very cold. I can't even believe how cold I got in my apartment while I was recording. I usually get very warm when I am recording, and you know, I have lights on me and I'm talking about these higher subjects, but being right near the window during a storm was just not my best idea. So thank you so much for, yeah, being here with me. And I look forward to talking with you guys again soon.